Welcome, everyone. We're going to be sharing today another of our complimentary webinars through Desert Waters. And I won't spend much time talking about Desert Waters because we have a lot of really important things to talk about. But check us out if you haven't already at desertwaters.com and see about free services and other services we offer for the correctional officers' well-being and all staff's well-being and their families. So today I'm greatly honored to have with us Tor Erik Larsen, all the way from, or rather in Norway. It's evening there, that's why we're having our webinar in the morning. Normally we have early afternoon times because it's evening time for him. And Tor Erik, I can't thank you enough for giving us of your time and your expertise and your heart. And the truth of the matter is that if this is the next best thing, if you haven't been to Norway, to tour there and study their system. But even if you have, it's going to be beneficial because you're going to get updates, developments, all kinds of new information to add to what you already know. So we are going to be having a 90-minute meeting time. If you have questions, please enter them on the chat. So welcome again. And Tor Erik, I would like to have you introduce yourself so that we can cover the bases the way you would like them covered. So off we go.
Thank you, Katarina. My name is Tor Erik Larsen. I am the president of a union for correctional officers in Norway. I've been so now for almost 6 years. I worked in corrections in 25 years. I am a prison officer by day and a union representative by night. No, it's been a while since I worked as a prison officer. So Katarina asked me to come on here and talk a bit about the Norwegian system, the Norwegian model. And I can see some people I met before in the webinar here. That's nice. Some people even been to Norway. So that's good. But I'll do like a basic talk about Norway because not everybody knows everything about Norway. But what I hear is that everybody has heard about the Norwegian way. And that's both great and a bit scary to me. But here goes. So Norway is a small country in Scandinavia. We're about 5.5 million people here. So it's quite a different land than the US. The Norwegian correctional system, I'll do like a small history drop on it. So in the 1830s, Norway was looking to the US on how to handle corrections. So we started using like the Philadelphia system, the penance system. And that was the ruling idea in Norway for about 100 years. And then in 1956, they published some white papers and started working on a new law to give the inmates more rights and make sure that we kind of treated the inmates with more respect and humanity. And it's continued to develop from 1956 until 1978 when we got a new white paper, kind of quite a visionary white paper about principle of normality. These are all words I'm going to come back to. The principle of normality. We're talking about staff security, stuff like that. And then finally, in 1997, we got the white paper that kind of controlled where we are today, where we started using an import model. I'll also get back to that. So kind of the change in Norway it started in 1956. We're now in 2025, but we're not there yet. We're better than in 1956, but we're not there yet. Just to make that clear. So in Norway, just to understand a bit about the Norwegian system, because it's quite a cultural leap from Norway to the US. Our basic principle has to do with humanity. Every person has value. Every life has value. No one person has more value than the other. So that's a basic principle we work by. And we wanted to go from penance and start looking at punishment as a possibility for rehabilitation. And if you want to rehabilitate, there are some negative factors you have to avoid and use positive reinforcement to maybe get you where you want to go. So in order to do this, we implemented something called the principle of normality. And that could mean a lot of things, but to us it means that we're trying to give the inmates coping mechanisms. We're trying to make a day on the inside of a prison to be as normal as it would be on the outside of a prison. You don't have street lights, you don't have shops you can go in and out of. You're still confined, but we try to make sure that everybody has meaningful activity every day. We treat every inmate with respect and courtesy, and we expect the same in return. And this is, I don't think it's shocking to anybody. I think that's what correctional officers try to do everywhere. We have systemized it a bit different, and for that we have quite different results, I think. So, yeah.
Eric,
yeah.
when you were talking earlier, you mentioned your statistics for recidivism. Could you mention them here? Because you talked about different results. This would be a good point to bring up what your recidivism looks like in 2 years and 5 years after release.
Yeah. Okay. So our last statistic is from 2020, and I think we're doing a new count in 2025. But in 2020, we had a recidivism after 2 years on the outside at 22%. And after 5 years, we had it at 27%, which I think is probably the opposite of what you guys have. And not everything is explained by the Norwegian model. That's important for me to say. It's also the Norwegian society. Norway is a small but really, really, really wealthy country. I think we have the largest government-owned money fund in the world. So basically, there's enough money in Norway that every Norwegian citizen could get, like, I think probably around $600,000 from the government. That's a huge fund. So we have the welfare system in Norway, which means that everything is free. Not free, but it doesn't cost a lot, like healthcare. If I go to the doctor, it costs me $18. If I go to the dentist, it costs me a bit more, but it's not enormous amounts of money. You have housing opportunities. Nobody needs to be homeless in Norway. If you wanna, you can talk to your county if you don't have a place to stay. You can talk to your county. It's also important to explain that in Norway, we have a capacity of 3,000 inmates. It used to be 4, but we decided that we don't want to incarcerate that many people. Now we're looking at going back up to 4,000. But corrections in Norway is, I think, in a year in prison, we handle around 7,500 cases. In probation, we handle around 10,000 a year. So the scale in Norway is quite smaller than it is in the US. And the cultural aspect in Norway, the trust. I think last I checked, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of our citizens trusts the government completely. And that is, in our culture, the trust element is of huge importance. So if for everybody who remembers COVID, when social distancing came about, there was quite a small group in Norway that were opposed to any orders from the government. Most of the people just said, "Okay, we'll do it," and the social distancing everybody loved, because Norwegians don't like to talk to people. So we loved standing 6 feet away from each other. That was just great. But I can't emphasize enough how important the cultural aspect, the Norwegian culture is in the Norwegian model. So when I'm talking about the Norwegian model, I'm not talking about something you can like fully implement anywhere in the world. It won't work. But I also know that there are aspects of our way of running corrections that you could be inspired by. You could maybe see, okay, there's a different way. Maybe we'll try that. But if you take like a huge prison in the US and say we're going to do the Norway model, we're going to get like 1-to-1 staffing ratio, and we're going to let everybody have 8 hours of meaningful activity every day, it's going to be chaos and mayhem on your side. But there are a lot of good ideas we're doing, but it's not a model that you can just move across borders without thinking about the cultural aspect, without thinking about the trust issues, without thinking about the sentencing levels. Life in Norway is 21 years. And 80% of the inmates who are sentenced to 21 years will be out by 14 years. So what this sentencing level does is it creates hope. And if you have a sentencing level where life is actual life, then you have no hope. There's nothing to lose. There's no incentive to behave. So these are things that you could kind of park way back in your head. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the import model. So Norwegian corrections, we only hire our staff and our administration. We have no health care. We have no school. We have work placement, security staff, and administration. Our schools are imported. It's the county's high school that are giving school lessons. So it's the county that's responsible for teaching the inmates. It's their staff, they walk around, they do their job, but they have no effect on the staffing ratio. They're not hired by the correctional facilities. It's the county's responsibility to make sure that every inmate that wants to go to school has the opportunity to go to school. And then there's healthcare. Same thing. It's the county's healthcare system that provides the healthcare for the inmates. It's not correction. And that's the basic idea of the import model. We started it early 90s, I think. We went from hiring our own teachers, our own nurses, our own doctors, and then to making sure that it's the county that is responsible. And why is this important in the bigger picture? The important thing is that they get the education they need and they get the health care they need. But when you say to the county that you're responsible for these people as well as the people on the outside, then you, at the same time, you say to the inmates that your worth is just as much, you're worth just as much as the people on the outside. You're not a special case. Your worth as a human being is equal to anybody else. So that's not doing much, but it sends a message. And then there's people in Norway who wants to abolish the import model. Well, specifically on healthcare, because it can be difficult. But for the most part, I think we're kind of proud of the import model. The message it sends about the worth of a human being is quite important to us. Yeah. I have to look at my notes because Katarina has told me something she wants me to talk about.
Well, and I was just gonna jump in here. One thing that struck me when I was there was that everybody was talking about they're gonna be our neighbors one day. They are us. There was no us against them. It was much more us than us against them, overall from everybody I encountered. So that's a little different from here too, or very different. There wasn't that distance, and maybe the import model helps bridge that gap and make it more like, oh, these people are part of the community. They're in there for a season to get straightened out in certain ways or helped or treated. But then one day they will be next door sooner rather than later.
But that's true. There are two things about Norway that you will hear time and time again. One thing is that every inmate is going to be somebody's neighbor. And like I said, that has also to do with sentencing levels. If life is 21 years and most inmates are out by 14 years, then of course it's smart to think that somebody's going to have that person as a neighbor. And the other thing is that the best medicine for a human being is another human being. Because Norway is quite harshly criticized by different organizations for our use of isolation. We have no inmates in Norway share a cell. Everybody, it's a single room. So if we can't workplace them, if we don't have a job for them, if they don't want to go to school, then we have no meaningful activity for them, and they'll be stuck in their room. They will be stuck in their room with their flat screen playing PlayStation. So even though it's not a good way to serve your sentence in a room with a TV. It's not something we try to avoid it. We have to have them out of their cell 2 hours a day. We're trying to legislate 8 hours a day, and we're shooting for 12 hours a day. But right now we're in a spiral on our staffing levels. Some years ago, we were 2,800 correctional officers in Norway. Now we're down to 2,000 because we have a problem with psychiatric patients that can't be placed anywhere else, so they go to prison. And that means that the environment, the work environment for the officer gets a lot harder, a lot tougher. And at the same time, we've had an explosion-like inflation with the war in Ukraine, which means that everything has started to cost a lot more, and the salaries of the COs haven't kept up. So a lot of people have changed jobs the last years. That's a challenge we're working on fixing right now. Traditionally, we have a lot of you that's heard of Norway don't necessarily know about our training academy. So I know it varies in the US, but our training academy is, at this time, it's 2 years. But we're also working on, and I think the decision will be made in this year or next, to implement the training academy as a full bachelor's study. But at this time, it's 2 years. It's a paid school. So you do 1 semester at school, you do 2 semesters as on-the-job training, and then you do 1 semester at school again. It's a 2-year academy with a lot of theories about punishment. You learn a lot about or not psychics, but about the mental health issues and stuff like that. But still, I think the academy today is not as good as it was 15 years ago. Because I think it's caught in a race where every job needs to have a bachelor's to fill it. And that might be right. Education is good, but I think we lost some of the mental preparation for the job you're doing along the way. And I'm a bit scared if we cross over to a bachelor's degree without implementing more of the preparation that is necessary to work as a correctional officer. So, but right now, it's 2 years, and it's a solid education. It's you learn a lot. You work on group dynamics. You do training exercises on your fellow students. You learn a lot about fixing a problem you didn't know existed. Which is basically, before I went to the academy, I worked for 5 years as an untrained officer. And a lot of the things that we touched on the academy, I learned on the job. But of course, it cost me a lot, the 5 years with no training. So I had to learn a lot the hard way. And I'm a bit scared that if we turn it into a bachelor's degree, we're going to get highly educated people that still are going to need 4 or 5 years in a prison and going to learn a lot the hard way. but that is a mental preparedness course that we haven't started yet, so to speak. So I could say something about staffing levels as well. All the new facilities we build have a staffing level of 1.1 to 1. So that means that it doesn't mean that there's one officer for every inmate, but our staffing levels are up to that. So basically, we'll have one officer on every 12 inmate per shift. And I don't know how all your facilities are, but I've talked to people in the US talking about 1 to 200 or something. And that's just crazy. Our staffing levels are hurting a bit now because, like I told Katarina earlier, the last 2 years we've lost 500 correctional officers. Not lost. They traded started new careers, gone to different jobs. They just lost the feel for correctional work anymore. It's also a part of the new generation, the Gen Zs. They're not too interested in working in corrections, at least not for a long time. They want some of the experience, and then they want to do other things. So that's where we're at right now. There's another principle in Norway, which we kind of claim as our invention, but every prison officer I'll talk to say they do the exact same thing where they work. I don't know if you heard about dynamic security. It's the idea that building rapport and having a good rapport with the inmates makes your workday more secure. So I think this is something every prison officer does, consciously or unconsciously, if they have a chance. If there's an inmate you can talk to, you can make a joke with, whatever, you'll do it. You build a rapport. It's a human thing. And the idea is that if an inmate feels he kind of knows you a bit, he's going to think about it twice before he lunges at you or stabs you or whatever. We just kind of systemized it a bit more and pulled like the boundaries a bit further than a lot of people have. So in our system, it's a method. We work actively to build a rapport. We work hard to build a rapport, to establish trust between the officer and the inmate. And that is, of course, to make sure that we're safe in our work environment. But the method, the reason we do it as a method is that if you want to move from punishment alone till punishment and rehabilitation, it's hard to influence somebody that doesn't trust you, doesn't believe you. So we use it to build trust, and then we start planting seeds of change. We use and one of the things we do, I think is originally from Canada, is something we call motivational interviewing. It's just different techniques of talking to people that kind of makes them think about and reflect over their own behavior, their own attitudes, their own way of dealing with problems. We want to create an inmate that has accountability for his actions, that reflects on and accepts the errors of his ways and wants to change. I can't make anybody change. It's impossible. If you met an addict, you can't tell somebody with an alcohol problem or a drug problem, you can't tell them to quit. You can't believe them if they say they'll quit. They'll have to show it. They'll have to want it. And we work with, our job is to plant seeds that make them want to change. And we have a whole system of formal interviewing and formal talks, which in my 25 years, I've done it once. Because formal interviewing and formal talks don't work. The majority of inmates have been failed by system after system after system. And if you bring them in for a formal talk, they'll just feel like they're fighting a system again. But what works is meaningful activity, building rapport, building trust, and planting seeds. And I don't know any other way to work, actually. It's so integrated into me that I couldn't do it any other way. I don't think I could go over to the US and try to work in a different way.
Can I ask you at this point to talk a little bit about the contact officer's even more focused role on building that rapport, because it will really take it a step deeper?
Yeah. So with the white paper in 1997, we implemented something called the contact officer. I can use my old unit as an example. I work, when I'm not running a union, I work in Oslo prison, which used to be Norway's largest prison. Right now, they're shutting it down. They're tearing down the prison next year. In my unit, there were 20 inmates and 9 officers working shift in that unit. Each officer was the primary contact officer of at least 2 inmates. And then you were the backup officer for at least 2 more. So what the role of the contact officer is, first and foremost, you have to build that trust. Because if they want help with anything, if they want to prepare housing for their release date, if they want to apply for anything, if they want to transfer to a lower security level, anything they need help with, the formal part of it falls on the contact officer. But we don't write anything for them. They have to write all the applications themselves, and then we kind of can help them along, talk them. It's almost the same as being a union rep. When I talk to my members, I don't write their applications and their demands for them. I just help them on the way on how to fill in the forms and stuff like that. It's the same role I will have as an officer with the inmates. I help them along, but the most important part of the job is to build that trust, because if not, the contact officer role will not work. So that means that every shift I have as an officer, I have to talk to those inmates that are on my contact officer list. I have to check in and just check, how's your day? What's happening? What are you trying to do now? Blah, blah, blah. And for many of us, well, I used to work at or Oslo prison is like a city jail. It's a remand and custody prison. So people will be on my unit for anything from a week to 4 weeks, and then they'll move along in the system. So my primary job would be to find their what kind of a unit they would fit the most in when we move them along. I would, since we got them straight from the street, my job would also be to make sure that they could get in contact with their family, to make sure that they keep their housing on the outside, pay their bills, stuff like that. So I am responsible for that. I'm not doing that because the inmate has to do it himself, but I'm responsible for making it possible for him to do all this. He has to take responsibility for his own stuff, but I facilitate that he can take responsibility. And if he needs to trust me a lot if I'm to facilitate in a good way. So that's why I say the core is building rapport and trust.
And there's something revolutionary I want to throw out here to kind of like shake everybody up. Talk about the carrot. Remember we talked about the carrot and the stick. Talk about the carrot of people earning like coupons to be able to do home visits and meet with family on the outside. Would you talk a little bit about that, or have the family come and stay on the premises?
Yeah. I could talk about the visiting house in Halden first. For those that have been to Norway, it's highly likely you've been to Halden prison, which is like world renowned. It's built up not so much as a prison. It's like when people come over here, they say it looks like a college dorm, and it's done intentionally. Then we go back to the principle of normality. If you put people in a cage, they're going to act like people you need to put in a cage. But if you put them in something that kind of resembles a college dorm or a small village, it's more likely that they're going to behave. And in Halden prison, they have their own visiting house. So it's a small house where inmates, particularly, we have a father in prison program. So in Halden, I think you have to complete the program, and then you can use the visiting house. So your family, your wife, your children can come visit you in prison and stay the weekend. And the house has a small garden and a play area for children. It's its own kitchen, so you can buy in food and make your own dinner and stuff like that. So that's because the connection between inmate and family, inmate children, is very emphasized in Norway. Because you want to make sure that an inmate keeps the positive influences in their lives, even though they're incarcerated. What you want is to make sure.
So we'll have him back in a second, I'm sure. When I was in Norway, we saw that place. It was like a little motel. Hi, sorry, come on back. Yeah, we froze for a minute. Come on back. Can you hear us? Okay, so I'll wait till he gets unfrozen. So it was like it was a darling little place for a retreat. It was a beautiful little house away from outside of the wall, right? It was not, it was maybe within the wall, but away from the prison.
It's within the wall, but it's moved a bit away from the housing units.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we have a lot of questions coming at us about violence and antisocial personality issues and things like that. But keep on going. And the other big carrot that is about people visiting home, that kind of blew my mind when I heard about that one.
So our operating law in our facilities give the inmates a right to have I think maximum of 18 days of leave a year. And that's first, you have to complete 1/3 of your sentence, and then the contact officer has to write a risk assessment, and if everything is green, you will get leave. We'll start with something short, like 4 hours to get outside, get a coffee, and then maybe 8 hours, and then maybe 12 hours, and then 1 day, like 24 hours, and build up to maybe a weekend. And of course, if you misbehave, if you act out, if you're aggressive, if you use drugs, then the risk assessment is going to tell us that you can't have leave. So this is a huge carrot for the inmates serving longer sentences. They don't want to lose the chance to go visit their family. Of course, we could just run around and say that misbehaving means solitary confinement, and misbehaving means no TV, or misbehaving means this, misbehaving means that. But in our experience, the carrot works way better than the stick. I see some of the questions that coming in, so instinctively I want to respond to some of them, but I'll try to wait until Katarina serves me the questions. I think, you also challenged me to say something about the golden era of corrections in Norway, which I will define from 2000 until 2010. Where our budgets were quite, they were decent. Our staffing ratio was way higher than it is today. Recruitment was not a problem. It was almost a problem getting rid of people you didn't want. That was more of the issue for us. But during that golden era, we saw actually, I think our recidivism numbers for that era was something around 15%. So actually way lower than it is today. But corrections will never be a budget winner, I don't think, in any country. Because people fail to look at the costs in society. They only look at the cost per 24 hours per inmate. So we started feeling the effects from 2010 and out. And in 2014, we started feeling the cuts really hard. And that's why we're in this kind of spiral right now. But we're going to come back. We just need to make sure that these politicians understand the worth of good corrections.
Yeah, and there were questions about, of course, violence and sex offenders. And I know when we talked, you talked about people getting to go home, not outside of the maximum security facilities. There were not people in the max security facilities, the high level, right? It was lower level facilities. So it's important to note that.
Yeah, so our different security levels of the corrections is we have the halfway houses. And we have, well, first and foremost, we use a lot of electronic monitoring. we use that more and more for like the drunk drivers, the non-violent offenders. So that's why we've shortened down our capacity in prisons. But we also have the halfway houses where you have to be in school or have a job to be in a halfway house. And then we have low security, which is the step before you go out to a halfway house or to electronic monitoring. And then we have high security, and then we have max security. Max security has its own rules and regulations. In a max security, if one inmate is on the hall, is out of his room, there's a minimum of 3 officers. And on the max security, the inmates will never meet another inmate. They will only talk to other officers. The most famous one is and he's on a time unlimited punishment, is the terrorist from 2011. He blew up some government buildings and killed 69 children on a politician summer camp. And he is serving a time unlimited punishment. But every second year, he can apply to get out. And he does. So every second year, we have to, Anders Breivik, yeah, as somebody talking about it. His name is not Anders Breivik longer. He changed his name to Fjotolf Hansen, which is an anagram for Adolf Hitler. So it says something about his mindset. And he applies to get out every second year. And the year he can apply to get out, he sues the government for inhumane treatment. So every year there's a big court involving him. And it's been like this since 2014, I think. But I don't know if he'll ever get out, but he keeps on trying. But our system is rigged so that we have to work with him as if he's getting out. But he's gotten one inmate that he can talk to. But the first 10 years of his prison sentence, the only people he talked to were correctional officers. And he's probably the most internationally famed inmate we have, and he's constantly in the media because of his lawsuits against the government and against the corrections. But the important thing is that it's his right. We can think of it. I sometimes think that do we need to spend money on this? Well, yeah, we do. It's important because he's a human being. His actions are despicable, but he's still a human being. And you can't believe in that people can change a little bit. You either believe that they can change or you don't believe. And believing is an active choice that you have to make every day. Just like trusting people. You can choose to trust people, or you can choose not to trust them. If you want to implement change, then you're quite dependent that somebody actively chooses to believe in you. If not, you can't motivate any change.
And you guys are very good at earning people's trust, learning the skills of de-escalation, helping somebody calm down, being respectful, so you earn trust, even from people who don't want to trust to begin with. That's what I saw.
Yeah. So if you ask people around the world, what's the essence of being a correctional officer? You probably get a lot of different answers, but When I'm asked that question, and I get asked a lot that question by different international groups visiting Norway, I always say it's the skill set of making people trust you in a short amount of time. And because of that job, people think I'm very sociable, that I love, that I'm outgoing, that I love talking to people. But that's not true. As an officer and as a union rep, I talk to people every day. I talk to people a lot. And I use the same technique as a union rep that I use as an officer to make sure that people trust me in the shortest amount of time. And that is the essence of my work as a correctional officer. And then people will say, what about security? What about this? What about that? There's nothing that ensures my security more than people trusting me. You've heard the saying, don't bite the hand that feeds you. That's how we work. If they trust you to help them, they don't bite. Well, some do, but usually because there's a mental history that we're not aware of. And of course, it's quite a risky business, because you don't only have to get people to trust you, but you have to be a good judge of character as well. You have to know if they're playing or if they're actually trusting you. And to do that, you have to be willing to fail.
Take risks. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Turek, would you also mention the overlapping shifts about how you guys empower the officers to know what's going on so they can have better judgment about what's happening?
Yeah. So we talked a bit about this in prep, and like I said, the dynamic security has been like this talk about the Norwegian model, but we use three terms of security. It's dynamic, it's static, which is your cameras, your walls, your doors, your everything. And we use the organizational security, which is how we organize our work. And staff overlap. So if I go to work at 7 in the morning, the first 15 minutes of my shift is going to be a roll call, where I'm going to be informed about everything that happened the night before. And then I'll do my shift, and the last half an hour, I will have an overlap with the afternoon shift. I will tell them about all the major events during the day and my unit. I'll say something about each and every inmate on my unit, so they know what to expect when they open the doors. They'll know if somebody had a bad day, if somebody had a good day. They'll know if somebody is anxious because they're waiting for something, if somebody's upset. They'll get to know all that. And we also use that half an hour to kind of decompress a bit and get from I'm working to I'm going home mode. And then the afternoon shift will do their shift, and the last 15 minutes of their shift will be an overlap to the night watch. And we do this. This is how all days go, and then our shift plans are also a bit different from what I've heard in the US. The most common thing I've heard from the US is that you'll do 4 morning shifts, then 3 days off, then 3 morning shifts, then 4 days off or something. And then you'll divide your shifts on seniority in many facilities. In Norway, in my unit, we're 9 officers. Everybody will work an equal amount of morning shifts, afternoon shifts, and night shifts. Since we're 9 officers, it will roll through on 9 weeks, and then we'll begin again. What this does is a couple of things. First and foremost, it makes it harder for the inmates to know who's working that day. Of course, some of them will start making schedules and stuff like that, but it's harder for them to know when we're working and when we're not working. So that kind of gives you the opportunity to let your shoulders down a bit on your way to and from work. And then it's another thing. If you have a morning shift, and we'll change shifts clockwise. So I will go from a morning shift to the next day I'll do an afternoon shift, and then the day after that I'll do a night shift. So I won't go night shift, morning shift, afternoon shift. If I do that, I will go night shift, day off, morning shift. We always follow the clock, and you won't go afternoon shift, race home, try to get some sleep, then go back to the morning shift. That will not be in our shift plans at all. So the 2 most important things in our shift plans is the continual shifts, that all the officers on the unit will work an equal amount of day, afternoon, and night shifts, and the overlap. Just today, just to be able to talk to you guys here today, I had a prep meeting with Katarina and Justin earlier this week. I had a prep before we started the meeting. I get ready. I need to think things through. It doesn't always seem like it, but I have thought most of what I'm going to say today through first. And you prepare yourself. And how do you prepare yourself on meeting inmates if you know nothing about how their day has been? So the overlap is essential.
Yep. Wow. Yep. And there's so much to talk about. And there were questions about how much violence is against your staff. And I remember when we were at the Oslo prison, we were told about some statistics about the total number of assaults on staff that year. Would you want to address that and also maybe mention some of the statistics? But it's very important for me to kind of interject that what we want to do for why we're having this meeting today is to A, become aware, and B, to say what can we do at this point of where we're at and take some aspects of this and implement them where we are without a huge budget needing to happen first. So we cannot import the whole thing, obviously, but like what can we learn and become more flexible where we work? So to Eric, would you want to say anything about violence against staff? Because I can feel people saying, how do you survive this? What about the antisocial personality people? What about the violent sex offenders? So they're probably wondering what happens with the dark side of attacks, and then statistics on staff psychological health.
Yeah, I'll begin with telling a story about Oslo prison. When I started working there in 2003, we had one unit with 14 inmates, all psychiatric patients, all prone to violence. And we had a maximum of 2 inmates out of the cell. and we had our staffing levels. We were a minimum of 4 officers on the unit all the time. But every time we opened the door, we ended up in a fight. And then we got a new senior officer. He said, "We need to do something. If not, all my officers are going to be on a sick leave or are going to quit because they don't want to fight every day working. They don't want to fight every day. They open the door to give somebody food or something." And we open the door. Even though we know the fight is coming, we don't use the hatchet in the door. We open the door. And he said, "We're going to try something new. We're going to get a spin bike. That's the first thing we're going to do. And all day long, one inmate is going to be on that spin bike. If they have all this energy, we need to make sure that they use it correctly." So he said, "We're starting with a spin bike, one inmate on it all day, no more. Still only 2 inmates out of their cells at the time. And we, like the first week, it was chaotic. We were fighting all day long. I had a 12-hour shift on a weekend, and I think I was fighting for 12 hours. And then after a week, we started seeing something that we started seeing inmates that actually wanted to use the bike. And we thought, what's happening here? And then he said, next step is that we will increase the yard time from an hour to an hour and a half. And we started seeing that when we opened the doors, they weren't as keen on fighting anymore. They were less and less keen on fighting. And then we went from maximum 2 to maximum 4 inmates out of their room at the time. And we increased the chances of gym time. And we started seeing that they started not fighting us anymore. So we were like, what, do I smell or what? What's happening here? And by June 2004, we would lock all 14 inmates out of their cell at the same time. And occasionally, somebody got in a fight. I think I froze for a bit there. But by June 2004, we were opening all cell doors, all 14 cell doors at the same time. No fighting. Of course, occasionally the inmates had some quarrels among themselves and would fight, but something happened. So we started thinking, okay, so the best medicine for a human being is another human being, maybe. But with that said, the violence against staff is increasing. It's not huge numbers like the US, but it's increasing. And why is it increasing? Well, I can tell you why. Because we're using more solitary confinement because a lack of staff. There's less meaningful activity in prisons today. Like I said to a lot of the groups that have been here, while the US are looking to Norway is starting to act like the US. We're doing more warehousing than we ever have done in my 25 years. So that's a problem, because if you're not mentally ill when you get in prison, solitary confinement will make you ill. So getting people out, making sure that they have meaningful conversations, building trust, That's more important than anything. And right now, with our staffing levels being low, we're not able to do that at the rate we're used to. That's why the violence is increasing.
And do you have any statistics on hand about like per year? Because I don't remember if it was 70 I heard. I don't know if it was for Oslo prison only or for the whole system when we were there in 2022. Something about a statistic that I heard. Do you have any statistics about assaults on staff
No,
or
I
not? If
think
not, that's fine.
if we start thinking about it from 10 years back, the statistics would be like, or say 15 years back, it would be, the numbers would be like probably nationwide, it would be like around 700 a year. Now it's doubled.
Ouch.
Yeah, but there's that's violence and threats. So a statement of "I'm going to kill you," that's perceived as a threat. So it will be in the statistics. And my life has been threatened probably 50,000 times in corrections. And unfortunately, I don't always think about it as a threat. So there are some dark numbers here as well, because the actual threat level is way higher than our statistics show. But violence is all from, that could be spitting on your shoe to hitting you in the face. So the amount of ugly and nasty attacks on officers, that's quite low. Quite low. I think we're talking about a dozen a year or something.
Okay. That's a big difference. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I'm jumping around because I'm trying to cover some stuff because it's just jumps up in my mind. And somebody asked also about, we want to talk mental health for staff right now for a minute or two or three. What kind of vacation packages you get? And I think they'd love to hear what I heard you say the other day about how many weeks a year you guys get and how many have to be consecutive days off.
The holiday. Yeah, so in Norway we have a law stating that every worker has the right to 20 days of vacation time a year. And then on collective bargaining, we've managed to get 5 more as well. So everybody has 25 days a year. And during the summer period, it says that our employer can decide when during the summer. The summer is short in Norway. Just remember that. So, but our employer can decide how we do our holiday, but we're entitled to do 3 weeks back to back. And then you have 2 more weeks that you can divide and take like single days or whatever. But 3 weeks, it's a right. Even if I take out all my holiday time during the springtime, I'm allowed. I have the right to have 3 weeks off during the summer. Then I won't get paid for the holiday, but I'm allowed. I'm entitled to 3 weeks consecutive during the summer.
So people have a time to detox, to get away and kind of unwind and calm down.
That's also a principle of our shift plans, that we try to build a shift with as much air between the shifts as possible. So people are allowed downtime. They're allowed to relax and kind of detox a bit. Because if you're walking in and out of a toxic area, don't think it's just the inmate that gets affected.
Nope. No, and you have some statistics you guys got last year about some rates of certain conditions, mental health conditions, and they tell us prison is still prison.
Yeah, so we did a mapping of the staff in prisons in Norway to map their psychological trauma, you can say, and it showed that I think what is it? I think 12.5% have spikes show that they are in a condition, possibly PTSD. I think 9% show that they have what they call complex PTSD. There's something around 36% that shows they have a condition similar to depression. 56% of prison staff have fatigue. And I think 30% says that the job influences their physical health in a negative way. And this report actually came about after the unions in Norway got involved with One Voice in the US, which kind of made us aware of the importance of knowing something, not just thinking and guessing about staff wellness, but we had to know something. So we kind of pressured the DOC to order this report, and the results were I won't say shocking because we kind of knew it, but it was great to actually have it on paper for once, that working in a prison is toxic and not good for your health.
Yes, and I can imagine that is hard for people to hear because we think that, hey, you guys have the best possible like a vacation compared to what working in a prison is here or a jail. But it still takes its toll because there are all kinds of conditions. You're keeping people inside that probably don't want to be there. And then you have the people with psychiatric illnesses that don't respond the same way that other people might. They are more unpredictable in some ways and harder in some ways to deal with. And so, yeah, it still takes its toll. And there is the occasional violence and the threats, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's still prison. Go ahead.
Well, the report shows that it's not the one-off, the big incidents that are causing trauma. It's all the little pokes every day. That's the big issue. So if you have a staff that works, if they have a bad shift plan, short shifts, not enough air in their shift plans, and no time to detox, then they are more prone to being sick than others. And at the same time, you have to keep in mind that a poisonous pond is still poisonous if it's little or if it's big. So it really doesn't matter if you work in a big system or a small system. Incarceration at its core is inhumane. So it creates a toxic environment no matter how you spin it. That's one thing. And the other thing is our recruitment. We search for people with a certain degree of empathy, which again leaves you more open to secondary trauma. So we kind of brought this on ourselves, you can say.
But at the same time, you need those people. I remember when we were at the academy, they were talking about they were looking for people that had a helper motive, like you said, empathic, caring, wanting to make a difference, not people who wanted to, or not people on a power trip who wanted to lord it over somebody and abuse them. So yes, you're running that risk, but you have more effective staff by having people who care to help, not just order people around. So it's a complicated thing. Yes, it's very complex. So the bottom line again would be, what can we take and implement now to make things better? Because we need to make things better. I mean, you have hiring issues. You should see our hiring issues and our vacancies. They're frightening. I mean, I was told the other day about a prison with 900 staff for the night shift. Only 2 staff showed up. A jail, sorry, it was a county jail. Only 2 COs showed up for the night shift out of 36 or whatever it was. I mean, that's scary. I was told by chaplain, he walked into a unit, there was no CO to be seen. He walked right out, got out of there as fast as he could. So these things are happening. So, wow, and we have a bunch of questions lined up. To Eric, if we invite you to come back, would you be available to come back for any follow-up if we don't get it through everything?
Of course.
If you could fit us in our schedule, thank you. So we have a bunch of questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I think I'll try and answer as many questions as I can.
Yeah. Okay. And I got a bunch from Justin. Thanks, Justin, for sending them to me. Wow. So I know that there are people that are wondering about, or there was a question about if you have a high percentage of gang activity or organized crime in your facilities.
Not too much. It's it goes up and down. Right now, it's not too much, but it's like I say, this is about something about the societal structure as well. Because if you lack nothing, then why do crime? Right? So desperation creates criminals. But if you do something on a societal level to minimize desperation, then the huge organized crime kind of falls away, because then it's all about profit, and a lot of people would choose not to be a criminal if they could.
Okay. And there was a question about antisocial personality disorder, folks who are basically what we used to call a sociopath or a psychopath that don't care. Maybe you mentioned that one person, the terrorist, maybe he may fit that category. I'm sure you don't give, I can't imagine you assess everybody or give them personality tests to see where they're at.
No, we don't, but we know that 90% of our inmates has a diagnosis of mental illness in some
90?
90%, yeah.
Wow, that's high.
But then you have to remember that on those tests, both migraine and ADHD maps out as mental disease. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what's the actual number, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. There was a question about juvenile corrections, and I know I have talked to somebody else about juvenile corrections in Norway and what we try to do with the young offenders, youth offenders. Do you know anything? I mean, I know you haven't worked in the juvenile system. Anything you'd like to share about juvenile corrections?
Right now, we have 2 facilities for juveniles, 15 to 18. If you're younger than 15, then you can't go to prison. And we're kind of building a 3rd right now. And we're going to need more room or a higher capacity in the future. Because right now, you asked me about gangs, but what we really have a problem with is youth criminals. I think in Oslo is not a huge city. It's about 790,000 inhabitants. And in the larger Oslo area, I think it's about 1.5 million people. But right now, I know the police are tracking around 500 youths from 13 to 17 that are doing a lot of crime. And we have also implemented a new conviction system, like a speed conviction in the courtrooms for the youth offenders. And we're starting to do custody in electronic tagging. We electronically tag instead of incarcerate, because there's not enough capacity. But what I can say is that our youth offenders that go to prison, they are hyper violent offenders. Yeah. So we have our largest facility. Now, hold on to your chairs. Our largest youth facility that's open today has a capacity of 6 inmates.
Wow.
Yeah. And would you like to know how many officers work there? Could you guess?
Yeah.
It's right now it's 31 officers there. Working 3 shifts. So I think they're 9, and 5. So 9 in the morning, 9 in the evening, and 5 at night.
For 6. For 6.
For
youth.
6. And right now there's only 3 inmates there, though. And the facility we're building will have a capacity of 11. So if you talk to an officer that's worked with youth criminals in Norway, they will say that 10 is the capacity at a unit. Nobody would want more than that. It's like going to kindergarten and saying we're going on an excursion, but you can just run along and I'll come after you and fetch you. It's impossible. You'll wear yourself out. So the maximum we'll want to have at a unit is 10.
So, wow, very different perspective. Here, I don't want even to think about how many we may have on the unit. And do you have the same contact officer concept and rapport building and spending time? Because that was a question that just came through.
In the youth facilities, yeah, you will have the kind of extended version, because instead of a contact, we have a staffing. There's 31 working in shifts at the youth facility we have with 6 inmates. 16 of them are prison officers, and 15 of them are environmental workers. So they're like youth workers. And they will have the responsibility of writing reports on the inmates and follow through and doing like longer conversations and stuff like that. So they will both have a contact officer and an environmental worker, like a social worker.
And I'm sure they have some therapy and of that. They must be getting some kind of therapy at some point.
Well,
Maybe.
that's the county's responsibility, not ours.
That's right. Mental health. Okay. So I know we're about out of time. Wow. Thank you guys for your barrage of questions. I know we've only responded to a sprinkle. Anything you want to say in closing? Give the whole group your hope for the future and practical thought.
There's always hope. What I think is that if you want something to change, then the change has to start with you. Because if I want to live in a society where people trust each other, then I have to risk it and trust others first. Trust is, I think it's a bad idea to say that you have to prove or earn my trust. Trust is always a choice. And if you want to make changes, start with yourself. Start thinking outside the box. Don't change the way you work, because I'm guessing there's some mandatory and some rules about how you work. But start thinking about how you could do things the other way. And the most important thing is, don't go to Norway, look at the Norwegian model, and go back to the US and say, we're going to do it exactly this way in the US. It won't work. You might have success at a minimal degree for a period of time, but it will backfire. There are too many things integrated in the system is too integrated in the Norwegian culture to work anywhere else. But there are a lot of ideas on small things you can do that will work anywhere in the world.
Wonderful. That sums it up really, really well. So we have that practical roadmap for us to kind of do some soul searching of what can I do in my sphere of influence, my neck of the woods, to make something better with issues of respect, decency, the whole thing of psychological safety. So thank you to Eric a lot. Thanks for coming, joining us after a long day of work. And we hope to see you well next month. We're going to do a presentation the 20th of February on who we are and what we do, because some people have asked about what you guys do, what are you about. So we'll do a presentation on Desert Waters, 22 years of serving corrections staff and families and agencies. So thank you to Eric. If you have any follow-up ideas, guys, send us an email at admin@desertwaters.com, and we may even bug you to Eric with a question or two, and think about another future appearance here, because I believe that was very helpful, very educational, eye-opening, very balanced, and thanks. And I know there are people who have a zillion things on their minds right now. I can see it on their faces. So wish you well. Thank you for the work you do, guys, from the whole spectrum, from retired, we have a lot of retired corrections people on this call, to mental health, to security, staff, custody, all kinds of staff. Thank you for what you do and what you go through every day. Yes, and in a way, in a strange way, to Eric, it's a comfort that it's not just all peaches and cream in Norway either, that the whole system takes its toll, no matter where you are, even under the very, very best conditions. It's kind of sad, but it's comforting in a strange way.
Yeah, so there's this movie called The Matrix, where a program says that this is the X version of the Matrix, and we didn't make it work until we understood that humans crave imperfections, and there's no such thing as a perfect system. And if people are selling you a perfect system, they're lying.
Very nicely said. Yes, yes, yes. Very imperfect world. We're in a very imperfect world with imperfect but lovely people, and even scary people sometimes, but still worth, like you said, worthy as a human being. So thank you. Thanks for taking time on your precious day to join us.
My pleasure.
We hope to see you next month, and take care and be safe, and wishing you the best. Thank you all. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.